So we're going to need a lot of wool for today's episode. But you know what? We don't need sheep at all anymore for any other episodes of Static Industry. So yeah, we're about to need a whole lot of wool here because we're going to get started into Applied Energistics finally. And well, we need that to make the cables properly. But we have other means to make wool, and we're going to handle that shortly. You know, once we actually get to needing to make the cables. But first things first, we need to come find one of these meteorites, and this one's looking pretty busted. And you need to find the center of it to find the mysterious cube. Now, as we learned back in all the mods 8, you don't want to use a silk touch pickaxe here. What we actually want to do is just bust this open and get all of the various Applied Energistics plate presses that we need to make all of the circuits with. We're also going to need to grab a bunch of this Certus, and hopefully these are all budding Certuses, but we'll smash these and go take a quick look. And what we want to find is a flawless one here. So there's one right there, and a second one. Oh hey, and a third one, so perfect. I actually wanted to bring 3 home anyway, so this means I don't have to go over here to this other meteorite that I already know about, although I might want to go mine at the Skystone at some point. And or other 3 Certus, because we're going to need a lot before we actually start automating it. But we're going to do the same nonsense we did for everything else that we wanted to take home and just use a cart assembler to bring it home in a cart. Voila. You know, the same thing we did with all of the spectrum crystals here, where I've just got them sitting on my front lawn, but we need to move all of this inside and actually start automatically harvesting all of this today, which thankfully comes as part of the electrical age chapter regarding this, because we just need to get down to the annihilation of formation planes to be able to automate all of this. We ironically don't actually need the ME controller to do this, but we need to get started on the rest of this up here first, which this is a little bit out of order because it lists the renewable Certus quest over here, which tells you how to bring it back, including what we just did. But I've got to admit, I'm a little at odds at what to do with Applied Energistics in this pack, because there's a note, and the note's true, but it's over here in the digital age chapter right before you get into the pattern processors and whatnot, and they tell you not to really rely on the auto-crafting because you just want to passively craft everything, which you can do with Applied Energistics, but we're already basically doing it for free with modern industrialization pipes. So I think I'm primarily going to end up using Applied Energistics mostly for fluid storage and handling, because that'll make it easier to move around than the pipe system I've got going around upstairs. Although it may not entirely solve that problem. I'm not sure yet because I'm a little torn on what to do here. Enderman. Anyhow, the first set of steps is pretty much the same as always. We need to process into Flug's crystal, which is a bit easier in some ways in this pack because we can just automate it through an electric mixer pretty simply, just with all the normal materials, the nether quartz, a charged Certus quartz, and then a redstone dust, which means you also have to process normal Certus into charged Certus quartz, which we can either do with an electrolyzer or an Applied Energistics charger. Honestly, I think I'm just going to go with the electric mixer because of overclocking and because it just fits the theme of the pack. And more time than I want to discuss, I finally have this set up to create Fluix. Now if we come back here, you can see that I have the machine set up to do the Certus, which we are now out of, into charge Certus. I'm sure that's not about to become a problem. And then into the Fluix. The thing is, while I was doing this, I was also cleaning up a lot of my old processing. This is where that window used to be, and this is now where a lot of individualized machines are, and a whole bunch of this is now gutted out. And we're slowly getting rid of all of the rest of it, although a good chunk of it, this right here and this, is for the fire clay bricks and the normal bricks. Not a whole lot of demand for those right now. On top of that, up here by the blast furnaces, I've also added a bunch like this is processing our nether quartz because you have to compress it from the dust, because the dust is the only way to get it from the ore. And we've got a whole bunch of machines to slowly gut out this assembly line, of which almost all of the circuit stuff is taken care of up through the basic machine hall and a few other things from there. So we've got some of this slowly getting worked out. But I'm not going to pretend this was quick, but we are slowly reclaiming some of the space because we can still fill all of this wall in. That said, I should get around to making the advanced wireless block chargers because they're within my means. They would take up less space and cover more territory, and they only really need annealed copper cables, and there's no real surprises there. I just have to stop being lazy long enough to go make those machines. It's not like it's hard. But the reality is it's now time to move forward in this and start making making the circuits and, you know, clicking that button finally. And this requires us to make all of the circuits, although technically I got a couple of these from a loot box an episode or two back. But the process of these has changed somewhat because they're required to be made in assemblers using molten redstone. And, well, the reality is down here is where I was making the molten redstone. I think it was in this one, not that I can tell because I've got no access to the top anymore. Yeah, there we go, redstone dust, which apparently I cut off. But it doesn't change the fact that I really just need to go make another blast furnace here, which I'm really running out of room. I need to push this wall back again, and I really don't want to do that. That's a lot of work. But for now, we need to go make the circuits, which on top of that, I'm also going to need to make some more laser engravers. We've made these before previously to even get into the second of the chapter. So I guess I need to stop being lazy and slap together even more infrastructure, huh? All right, so I've got the first step of these set up with just the inscriber presses, but I want to point out that these top two are openly problematic because this one requires diamonds, which I have a finite amount of, because while I have infinite diamond dust, I can't make it into diamonds without the implosion compressor, which requires quite a lot of titanium, which I don't have yet. Now, thankfully, we aren't far off from titanium. It's literally the next thing off in the modern industrialization direction, and we do have a small amount we could cool, but it's a vacuum freezer sized multi-block, so we need quite a lot of titanium. But for now, I'm just going to manually run it. This one requires Certus quartz crystals, which has a similar problem because we are not automatically getting them yet, so they're all being eaten by the electrolyzer right now. Thankfully, I set them up over here by the mob farm a bit ago, so we've already been able to get some more out of it, but it does take a bit for these to grow. It's not happening automatically yet. There is the usual growth accelerator that we could put them around them to make them go faster, but we would need to be able to make the actual pieces for it yet, which we can't. So I guess I should go finish this up real fast, huh? Yeah. And there we go. All of the circuits are being made, although limited amounts of 2 of them. Coming back behind them, you can see the nice blood red pipes of the molten redstone that is coming out of the currently emptied entangled tank because we aren't making it very quickly, nor am I storing it in big tanks yet. We need to fill up this area with all the liquids, but I'm not processing that till after we have AE2 established. Which brings us to the next step of being very confused as to why the meteorite compass is after the AE2 processors. It even explains it to you, you can use it to find a meteorite with. But the reality is we want to press on straight down through the ME controller into the annihilation plane so we can actually get started on automatically harvesting the Certus. And this, thankfully, is everything we currently have at this point. We just need to go put it away and make one. So I guess we should just go do that, huh? But this by itself is not going to be good enough, and oddly enough, it doesn't seem to show the energy acceptor in here. But I'm fairly confident saying we're probably going to need some of this, but this requires quartz glass, which is just made from more Certus dust. So I guess we need some more Certus, huh? So either I can wait for more Certus crystals to finish growing, or I can just smash the buds right now to get some dust, which is getting pulled over by that vacuum hopper. All right, so I put it up here on the 3rd floor where all of my liquid processing is, because I figure it being close to where the tanks are gonna be in theory is probably the best place to put it, despite the fact that the inventory systems are way below us. I'm gonna have to run a lot of cable. But I just set it up back here under the stairs temporarily with a normal entangled tank to MV steam turbine into an energy acceptor into the ME controller. This isn't entirely ideal because it doesn't even expose all the faces, but I'll be able to expand a cube back here to be slightly larger. The reality is, you've seen how many machines I've got that I have to connect to. It's going to be a problem, and we're not going to use it for the vast majority of these. So hopefully I won't need too many faces on that ME controller to begin with. I should also point out that there is a note here that says the number of channels have been increased. Normally there's only 8 on a normal cable, but they've been changed to output to 16, and the dense is going from 32 to 64. So hopefully we won't need that many controllers, but we'll see how this pack goes. I've got no idea how bad the surprises coming down the chain are. Anyway, so automate the collection of the Certus crystals. We need to move on. We didn't even need this anyhow. What we need are the Flux cables, another energy acceptor, and then the annihilation plane. The big thing here is it requires making the annihilation core, which mostly just requires Flux dust, which we didn't have previously, which we can now grind up and make. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like the Flux cables were really changed all that much recipe-wise, so I made 2 batches of the quartz ones, and now we've got at least some cables to get us started. I'll probably need to make more later though. I'm also just going to manually brush up some of the Flux into dust right now because we don't have that much to use. And with that, we can now make the annihilation core, which will let us make 2 annihilation planes. We're going to need a lot more than that, but we've got to start somewhere, right? So, fun fact, I went and smashed one of my pure Certus crystal buds trying to gather some more dust. So Another reason why we need to hurry up and automate this, because now I gotta go find another one. You know, measure once, cut twice only works if you actually measure it correctly the first time, and I did not space these out at all properly for annihilation planes. I need to remove all 3 of these and separate those a bit differently. I gotta probably have to place them in a different spot entirely. One of these days I'm gonna learn, okay? Really. Well, it's apparently been a while since I've done AE2. It took me longer than I want to admit to figure out how to set this back up again. I opted to use an ME controller here just because it's gonna be a cabling nightmare anyways, and I didn't want to have to make it a huge mess of quartz and dealing with a whole bunch of imports into the drawer network. So what we have here is normal power into an energy acceptor into the ME controller. The ME controller comes out, goes into a storage bus on top of a drawer or access point. This is so we can put everything back into here. From here, it comes up to a pair of annihilation planes that both face crystals. When these grow, they will immediately break, even if they've hit the budding stage, because annihilation planes will automatically fill any inventory slot they have access to. In this case, I do have a drawer with Certus dust, but it'll only go up to 64. So once this fills up, it will go back to filling up this as normal. It might take a bit. The other thing to note is I'm pretty sure the bottle time works on these. It did seem to speed it up when I did it. So that's one way of getting through this faster, although it's not the only way, because now that we have this started and now that we have power going over to here, it's probably time to look into making some crystal growth accelerators, although it requires a full flux blocks to do it. But this will actually speed up their growth rate significantly. All right, so we've got the basic setup here. I now have 2 crystal growth accelerators on the top and bottom, so there's only 4 sides exposed, but they are ping-ponging really quickly now, because now we've got the dust rolling in. So now that this is full, we now have them being converted into flukes, and eventually these Certus crystals will also backfill and this will stop pinging. I think I'm actually going to replace these 3 other flawless ones with the ones for Spectrum, because at the rate this is going, it's actually pretty fast now and it should stay backfilled. I'd also like to clean up the build a bit to make the cables a little bit less exposed. I lied. I wired them all up because I figured I want more crystals right now, and I'm not even working on the Spectrum stuff, so that can wait until I actually need them. All right, with that squared away, I went through and finished off almost all of the quests here in the AE2 section in the electrical age, except for the ME security terminal. And that's only because it requires these ME storage components, which just require a whole lot of subcombines. We could do this, but I would much rather automate these since we're going to need them for digital storage anyways. But of course, the easiest way to do that is going to be with molecular assemblers, and the easiest way to do that is going to be with crafting CPUs, which is going to, oh god, it's going to require memory. Fine, we'll do this the easy way. There, fine. Now I've completed all the quests, so I guess let's go jam the button and get all the rewards from this mess. And of course it gives me a cobblestone generator Mark III, which I just made earlier today. See, right here, back behind my basic starting stuff because I ran out of cobblestone for making all the gravel and sand over here. Listen, I have near infinite normal stone. I just didn't want to set up a grinder to grind that up to turn it back into cobblestone when I can just make a cobblestone generator. Now, you know I can't just leave this undone at this point, right? Because all we have is Certus creation made. What we need to do is start at the very basis of the auto-crafting stuff so they can at least get the digital storage stuff set up so I can get started on the transfer of the liquids. We're not going to do that much today, but we are going to get the pattern processors made and the crafting CPUs. And that requires delving down into this wing right here inside the digital age chapter finally, because this is what we needed the stainless steel for. We need the molecular assemblers, we need the crafting CPUs, and we need the ME pattern provider. What we don't need is the matter condenser. So we will start with the crafting CPU since this is the part that we absolutely require to start making the automation for the memory for the other parts. And these are all pretty simple. They're mostly just a crafting unit and any sort of memory. And the crafting is where we need all of the stainless steel before that we needed plates now. I can't make too many of these crafting CPUs right now because the crafting co-process require the diamonds. So that's not ideal, but now we have the first one with a 16K crafting storage, which honestly for what I'm doing right now is probably overkill, but we do need to start making some of the memory so we can get the storage disks made, and those are kind of tedious to make manually. Next, we need a molecular assembler, which is thankfully stuff we all have prepared now, though we don't have the cores set up to be automated yet, but we can work on that shortly. And we also need a pattern provider. And thankfully, we're finally getting to use the turbo machine hulls and the cores that we needed for all of this stuff, yeah? And lastly, we're going to need an ME interface, which we've already made downstairs. And then I'm going to want a storage bus, which is going to take another ME interface. And then lastly, we're going to need a crafting card, which requires a basic card, which is something we needed to make some other stuff, which just requires the calculation processor that we finally made. Yes, and then the one last rabbit hole, because we do need the pattern encoding terminal, which requires us making another crafting terminal, which requires making another ME terminal, which I had already made in the earlier chapter, and I've just got it sitting right here right now, not that I have inventoried access. And then, woo, we need some blank patterns, and I did not realize those were going to take stainless steel, but thankfully we can afford that. All right, so what we need to do to set all this up is start by putting the pattern encoding terminal up, open that up, toss some blank patterns inside here, and then figure out what we want to encode. In this case, we're going to start doing the memory components because I don't want to make those by hand. 1, 2, 3. Now, most of this stuff is stuff we have automatically being made currently in our systems over here, so we mostly just have to hope that it has it in stock right now because we're not going to be auto-processing most of these materials. These go in the pattern provider, and now that we have that in there, we can come back to the crafting terminal and see that our storage components are here, and we can tell it we request two 16Ks, but because we don't have it in the storage system, we can't actually do that yet. Okay, so this is kind of junk, but I ran the cable down. But I didn't do it in any sort of way I would consider at all cleanly made, since I even forgot I had this space sitting behind my water wheels here, just completely unused. I should probably put some machines in here. But it just ducks down in this tunnel that I dug to go build the oil drilling rigs, and I've got it connected to the drawer network right here because it passes by. Where did you come from? So I've got a storage bus into the drawer network right here, which then comes around here into where this will ultimately be hidden by chests. And this will all be covered by cable facades eventually. I could put it one down and actually hide them more easily, but I'm not going to bother. And up here into the other side of the Tom's Crafting Terminal, where there's already an inventory connector cable instead of a normal hidden one. I tried it up here. That was a bad idea. I need to repaint that. And then I put a storage bus directly on it. If we come into the Tom's Crafting Terminal and scroll to the bottom, you can see that I have these wizard items sitting in the chests here somewhere. If we go back up to the ME system, we can go into the crafting terminal here, see all the things in the drawer network, as well as the wizard items that are in the Tom Simple storage. Now, linking it directly to the Tom Simple storage is probably going to be a source of lag. Honestly, I don't actually know, but I would need a ton of storage buses to connect that many chests, and I'm not cutting over to digital storage, at least not right now. So I'm just going to leave that as it is. It should work fine. But the important part is we should be able to come into the crafting terminal now, hit the 16K ME storage system, tell it to make 2, and it'll tell us we don't have quartz glass because of course I didn't make the recipe. Fine. Put that in the pattern provider. Put this in the ME interface, and we can tell it that we always want it to stock, a full stack of 64, say. And you would think I would remember that I need to have a separate Flux ME cable coming in this that's not just the storage bus. But now you can see that it quickly made a whole stack of them, and it's now sitting here, which means it's now available via the terminal, via that storage bus. So it'll always passively create 64 of those, which means we can now do the same for the storage units. So now we've got this. Oh hey, and I almost forgot to do the most important step that's kind of the reason why I'm doing all of this ultimately. We need to make the wireless crafting terminal, which thankfully is almost all parts that we've had before, with the exception of a dense energy cell for the most part. We also have to make these wireless receivers, but this is nothing strange, there's just more stainless steel, and then a bunch of flukes that we already have. And there, after a little bit more automation, we are good to go on the wireless crafting terminal. I should note that I added more of these up here, and added a whole bunch of automations just to get us this far. It's still not all the way, but it's mostly, but now we need some power. And let's see if I can just whack this capacitor, yep, and pull all the power out, and that barely charged it. So we're gonna have to put a player charger in here at some point. But if we right click it now, you can see device not linked, and that's because we need to do the next step, which is make a biometrics card, which isn't too bad other than the fact that it requires another engineering processor, and we're getting low on diamonds. We take this, we shift right click it to bind it to ourselves. You see how it says biometric card RDAL. You go into your ME security terminal, you put it in here, and you give it all of the permissions you want it to have. In my case, all of them. But you notice that we right click and it says device is not linked still. And that's because we need a wireless access point. And I forgot the most important part, which we need to put the wireless terminal up here inside the security terminal to link it. Now between those, we should now be able to see all of our inventory. That said, we are, however, locked to a relatively short range, and we need to add some wireless boosters to this, which requires enderpearl duster, because of course it does. Although I probably already have some from the recycler. Yep, I do. So let's add a bunch of them. hopefully that's enough. And now we have a bit more range. And yeah, I tested this a few times, but I've added a bunch more. Now we can get basically the far back corner of our base, which is really the main goal at this point. But that also means I no longer need the Tom Simple storage one. That said, we did swap a powerless inventory solution for a powered one, but I think we're doing good enough right now that this shouldn't be an issue. And now we can do auto-crafting via the ME system and access everything else. So I think we're in a better spot than we were before, and I can hopefully get started on my liquid storage stuff soon. Probably won't cut over my whole inventory system over to digital storage, but we'll see how it goes. And yeah, if you found this episode interesting or entertaining, please consider like or subscribe if you're new. As always, I'm Ard. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.